Women everywhere are finding their voices, opening their hearts, and awakening to divine consciousness. A movement is underway at this time of great change, greater than you have even anticipated. Here, for you, for all of humankind to evolve into divine consciousness, it is time. Divinity lives in the hearts and souls, bodies and breath of each one of us. The divine is in you. It is in the rocks and the trees and the birds and the sky, the waters, and in the many creatures on the planet. Divine intelligence is the one energy that connects all of space and matter. You are not separate. You are divine. This time, this awakening is calling us, all of us, to embrace ourselves as whole, as one, as connected. One beingness. The acceptance and emergence is underway. It has been coming. You've felt it, you've known it, and now you are a part of it. I'm here as a guide. I am here not to usher in the awakening or the movement. That's already here. I am a guide to women and their beloved families. I remind you of the access that lives in your very being. I show you that fear is a lie. The vitality you feel from within is real. It is the life force that you are meant to bring into full expression. Being your full self will end suffering. You will end hunger. You will end atrocities against the earth and other people, animals, and the air. You will end self-defeating acts of doubt and cruelty and abandonment. And together, we stand strong with love and power in grace. This is for us to do. I usher you perhaps to your own heart, or guide you with these words to your own soul. You deliver yourself as the radiant light that will illuminate your world. These words were written many years ago in a channeling journal, and I'm sure they moved me at the time that I wrote them and spoke simply and fully through and to my soul. And yet I closed the book and moved on with the day, and the next time I journaled, I wrote something new. And then years later, I picked up the book, and as often happens when we're in those synchronistic moments, the book fell open to that page where this call was speaking. And then I knew it was time. Time to truly understand that this message and this yearning that lives in the souls and hearts and lives of so many women throughout the world was in part something for me to speak to. I'm Tombra Harck. I am the founder of Nuvolution's Wisdom School, and I'm here today to introduce you to, or maybe deepen your understanding of, a particular soul journey of the emergent woman. You've probably heard, as most of us have, about the myth of the hero and his journey. And it's profound and extraordinary and a wonderful thing for us to have as a map, perhaps, to see what life's unfoldment can entail. And it's the hero's journey, which is a masculine orientation. I'm not going to say that the emergent woman is a heroine's journey, But it is definitely the journey of accessing, claiming, and embodying the feminine, the feminine of your body, the feminine of your intuition, your access to understanding that's not about knowledge, but about beingness. I first discovered this journey, if you will, when I was in what I think of as the second phase of the journey. So, the first phase of the journey, and there's 5 phases that we'll go through really briefly here because you can understand this is a lot to take in. The first phase of an emergent woman's journey, and this is true about every woman who I've talked to for over 2 decades that identifies with this. We start off our lives in accomplishment and drive, and our identity is linked to the things that we do, the things we create, the things that we influence. We have a lot of ambition, and it's fine. All of that's great. The challenge, of course, is that when you're identified with your ambition, you're identified with your drive, there's a whole range of who you are that you're missing and that you don't have access to actually accomplish the things that are truly meaningful to you. But it's not a problem. It's simply the first phase. And if you didn't have this, the second, third, fourth, and fifth extraordinary phase of this journey would never be possible. So, my first invitation to you is to acknowledge that that may be where you started in an identity of perhaps being more of a man than the men you know. It's a phrase that I've often heard from the women that I've worked with who speak to this journey. The challenge, of course, is that at some point, usually somewhere between 35 and 50, and occasionally in the late 20s, but rarely earlier than that, our hero, N, if you will, our emergent woman, will somehow stop being able to accomplish, to achieve, to make her mark, to have results come out the way that they've come out before for her, with her skill and her knowledge and her resources. Nothing's quite working the same way, or the things she really wants to have work don't work the same way. And when this happens, it's disorienting. She's been identified, maybe you've been identified with where you've been in your consciousness about your value in achievement. Now, the way this usually starts to happen is you get sick and you don't heal in the same way. You don't recover in the same way. Maybe you have an accident or an injury, which is one of the ways that I experienced this. Well, maybe and couldn't seemingly heal. Like it made no sense to me that my body wasn't recovering. And yet it wasn't. Or perhaps relationships that have been so true to you no longer are. Or maybe where you live, or maybe that you live somewhere that doesn't feel like your place anymore, even though it's always been. Something about your daily identification of who you are gets rattled and starts crumbling around you. And again, none of the things that you've done before work. It's disorienting for sure. But what you don't usually know at this stage is that somewhere earlier in the path, and maybe it's before this soul ever incarnated into this experience, maybe it was somewhere in your childhood in a moment in the woods, or a moment of grace, or a mystical experience. Or maybe it was a moment when you were just awake to possibility. And in that moment, a vow, a desire, a prayer to listen deeply to the wisdom, to come home to yourself was set in motion. And that's what invited this second phase that feels like a crumbling, a disorientation, a deconstruction of who you are. When I was in that stage, I got introduced to an ancient myth that helped me beyond compare all the other ideas of what I had been engaged with mystically or psychologically or spiritually or physically. Like nothing was as enlightening to me as this ancient myth. And it dates back perhaps to 3500 BC. That's a long time ago. What I love about that is that it suggests that all the ways that we say that this is because we are women living in the Western world, or we are circumstantially affected by our environment. Sure, we are. But this evolution of a woman into her fullness, her wholeness, is ancient. It is not circumstantial, cultural, or anecdotal. Now, you might be familiar with the myth of Inanna and her sister Ereshkigal. That's the myth I'm talking about. And in that story, when I first heard it, and I was 35 or 36 years old and going through this complete deconstruction, I started to have a sense of grace with my own experience. That's a hard one to come by when it feels like everything's falling apart. In the answering, in the listening, in the dark nights of the soul, I began to understand what this myth was also informing me about. And this moves us into the third stage, and that is the phase of surrender. I know you've heard it. You've probably practiced it or fought against it, because anybody who identified with that first phase, no way you're going to participate in surrender. True release of the control and the clinging and the um, shoring up that you've probably done for the first many, many, many years of your life. But this kind of surrender says, I am not those ways of being. Whoo, that is freeing, disorienting, sorrowful, challenging. And again, I'm going to say freeing. For when our goddess queen from the story, when Inanna surrenders, she is left in a state of such raw exposure. And who in their, let's say, right mind would consciously choose that? But someone who's actually answering that vow, that prayer, that desire to access the wisdom of all time, to come home deeply and truly and fully to yourself, to being whole. She's more likely. And if we fight this phase or any phase, it only keeps us in a state of agitation and pain and struggle. Now, some of that might be necessary in the healing and the transformation, but none of that is a permanent state unless you just don't know that you can follow the deeper understandings and the mythologies that inform us throughout time, that invite us into a deeper and truer expression of life. In this state of surrender, new possibility emerges. In this, I am open. Ooh, and not just filled with possibility. I am the expression of possibility. We start to move into a quantum expression of humanity. And yet, what's this have to do yet with welcoming and embodying the feminine? This is right where it happened. For she is openness. And I say she, which sounds like gender, and yes, it is, but it's more than anything humanly or animally expressed as feminine. This is the feminine, capital S, feminine, the embodiment of your sensory self, your intuition, your access to embodiment that may or may not require words and reason and accomplishment. She simply is. She's not all grace and happy and love and mothering sweetness. She's full and fiery and rich and, yes, loving, and has arms that can hold and embrace and nourish you, but also can stand you up by the shoulders and say, now's your time. Live it, be it. I'm here for you, with you, be yourself. She's all that, and she's not out there somewhere doing it. She comes into and through you, which may look like nobody you ever thought you were going to become, or more likely, someone who you knew always lived inside you, like that seed that could actually grow into something magnificent. Our fifth stage comes full circle when we have this understanding and depth of expression that is the fullness of your embodiment of the deep feminine. And now we return to where the circle all started, where she identified with herself as the masculine more than anything ever possible and loved it and was powerful in it. But it was limited because she didn't have this. Now, bringing herself full circle back and into an embrace, a mutual intermarriage, if you will, to borrow a Jungian term, of the masculine and feminine within. And now he's in service to her in the most exquisite ways, able now to bring your grace, your power, your vision, your embodiment into your visions for life, into your family, into your career, into the ways that you live in your body, the way you nourish yourself, the way you create home or travel or put your energy into missions of change and contribution in your community or in the world. This wholeness is exquisite, and it's a truer to you connection than perhaps any of the phases that led up to it. And while all were true, this one's whole. This one's all of you. The emergent woman, as I refer to us, or emergent women who have walked this path or are on it, are often vibrated by the realization that the path is much greater than her own circumstances. And maybe this is true for you, it certainly was for me, like While learning about this myth didn't change my whole perspective instantly, it gave me courage and understanding about how to participate, about the resources that I might need to draw on, and the love and healing and patience and willingness that I was being called into. As I've worked with women through their emergent journeys over the years, I have found that that has been true for them too. If it does not resonate with you, it doesn't mean that you won't and don't embody the feminine. It means you had another path. If it does resonate for you, I invite you to consider yourself among those who are here to contribute to the changes of humanity. We are living in a time of great change. These are words I have said for as long as I can remember now. We are living in a time of great change. And you and I, we are a part of living that change into existence. It doesn't happen without participation. It's not happening to us, it's truly happening through us. And I invite you to share with me the experience that you're having or have been having along the journey. What are you recognizing about yourself in each of the phases? Have you gotten stuck in one? That's one of the things that often happens where the perhaps shadow elements are as we become identified with, I'm in this phase and this has become my life. And if that's any phase, it doesn't work. Even if it's that open phase, or even if it's the embodiment of the wholeness phase, doesn't work if you become rigid in this is where I am. And now I don't know what I want to say about that. I think what I want to say about that is that there's always an opportunity, a moment perhaps, to breathe, to feel your feet on the earth, maybe even to lie your whole body down on the earth, on the grass or under a tree, or if all you have is a patio or a balcony, great, do it. Lay yourself down so that you can feel yourself connected to and held by something bigger than you. And to release the rigidity into that. You are a gift of possibility for us all. Again, my name is Tombra Harck. I'm thrilled to know you and to welcome you here. And I look forward to hearing from you.